sponsored Journal of the Communist International. But in other words, I mean, the logic of the situation seemed to drive him to the conclusion that this thing called socialism or communism was needed as a rapid modernization strategy. I mean, that there was a level of desperation in this conclusion, but I mean, I find it completely understandable. Unfortunately, it did not work at all. I mean, unfortunately, it proved to be a disaster, as I will detail, as I get into it. But I mean, another truly incredible thing. I mean, Simone de Beauvoir had gone to China, and she came back and published a book in 1958, The Long March, about how wonderful everything was in China. And that seemed to be the verdict of the sort of the Beauvoir-Sartre team on China. I mean, we don't really hear from Sartre. The next time that we hear from Sartre, it's because he goes to Cuba and publishes a very favorable report on Cuba, 1961. Then in 1970, Sartre actually becomes involved with a Maoist organization in France, and famously was distributing their newspapers from the trunk of his car. I mean, the reason why I'm going into all of this, I mean, in other words, you had this picture of China as a sort of an idyllic, society in which the modernization problem had been solved or something. I mean, none of these people told you that there was a great famine in China resulting from the crackpot government policy. I mean, in which, the high estimate is that 45 million people starved to death. I mean, that's from 1959 to 1961. I mean, we have 45 million deaths here. Again, that's the high number. I mean, but I feel free, if any legitimate historian uses that number, then I feel free to use it. I mean, if you want to see a lower number, you can research it for yourself. I mean, there's a question about whether there was systematic cannibalism or sporadic cannibalism in China at that point. But extremely significant that even though, I mean, the human rights people, this is very specialized stuff. It's very specialized stuff. But I mean, the human rights people